Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm doing a video that is very different than the usual type of videos you can expect to see on this channel. Because today I'm just talking about the Dice Tower. That's the goal of this video. I want to talk about the Dice Tower. I want to talk about how unique they are to the space, how important they are to the space, and why I think they're worth supporting. And this is kind of semi-inspired by the fact that a few weeks ago on a live stream, I don't remember what the prompt was, I don't remember what the question was, but for some reason I started talking about the Dice Tower, started waxing eloquently, my opinion of waxing. I was rambling less eloquently about why I think the Dice Tower is so unique, impactful to me personally, impactful to the hobby, and then I was like, you know what, they have their annual crowdfunding campaign coming up shortly, I should save this for a video that I do around then, because I think these are things worth saying, I think these are things worth thinking about, whether or not you're even personally a fan of them yourself, I still think they're important to the space in a way that no other channel is. And be very, I do not want to be misquoted here. I'm not saying other channels aren't important. I think a ton of channels are important. I think the wide variety of different types of opinions are important. I think different channels excel at different types of content. But there's several things that the Dice Tower does that I do not believe anyone else does. And I think they are incredibly important to the space. And I should note, by the way, before we get into this, just worth noting that they have their active crowdfunding campaign right now. It's over on GameFound. They're doing their beginning of the year support drive for the channel. I am CMO of GameFound. Obviously, that is a slight conflict of interest because I'm like, hey, support the Dice Tower and their GameFound campaign. Also, I do not do this for GameFound campaigns. I do not think I've ever done this for a GameFound campaign where I'm like, you should support this campaign. I don't do that. Hopefully this can be taken in the spirit that it's intended, which is not, me trying to promote a GameFound campaign, rather me trying to promote the Dice Tower that has been personally impactful to me both in my hobby as well as the content creation side of things. They've been impactful to me across the board. I'm a huge fan of the Dice Tower, have been for a long time. Hopefully this is taken in the spirit that it's intended. But with that said, I have no idea how long this video will be. This video will definitely be. Remember that part where I said waxing eloquently and then changed it to rambling? That is absolutely going to be this video. I have a few specific elements I want to talk about in the way that Dice Tower is unique. I have no clue if this ends up being a 5-minute video, a 25-minute video. I don't imagine it'll be the latter. But I just want to talk about why I think the Dice Tower is so different and also so important. There's no other channel that if I'm wrong with this, please let me know by all means. And I should also note that this is not in any way, again, I said this already, this is not in any way meant to denigrate any other channel. I think there's a ton of content out there that is incredibly helpful to a variety of people, and the biggest thing on an individual level is finding the types of content creators that resonate with yourself. Whether it's because of the opinions they have, whether it's because of the way they convey their opinions, whether it's because the spin they put, the presentation they do, whether they tell more of a story, have better presentation, whether they talk faster, that's why you're here on this channel, whatever the reason is, I think it's important that you find the people that you resonate with. But on a larger scale, not on an individual which channels work for you, but on a larger scale, I think the Dice Tower does things that no other channel does. The first of which, and I think arguably the biggest, is they cover nearly everything. They cover nearly every game that comes out, or at least nearly every game that comes out that's worth covering, and frankly several that are not worth covering. No other channel does that. And that's something that's always important. Like one of the critiques that the Dice Tower does occasionally get, and I definitely get on my channel, is like, oh, it's quantity over quality, I hate your videos or this or that. There's always going to be that opinion. And I understand that. Make no mistake. Pick whatever channel you want. Shut Up and Sit Down is a good example. Highly crafted stories that tell such an incredible video review. Those are incredibly helpful for a variety of reasons. Again, Shut Up and Sit Down is also a tremendous asset to this hobby. I think there's so many channels that are in what they do. But you'll also notice that the channels that have those types of videos manage to cover a handful of games here and there. In a hobby where 7,000 plus games come out every single year, where it's impossible to keep up with the amount of games that even exist, let alone being able to play them, having a channel that covers nearly everything that is worth covering is so important. Again, whether or not you personally watch every single video, the ability to be able to search for any game that has any degree of notoriety, and knowing that a video will pop up almost certainly on the Dice Tower, they are there. Like, they are there, they are present, they actually cover the hobby. It's not just, hey, I'm excited about this game, let me tell you about this game. It's not just, here are the most exciting games that are in the space right now, so I'm going to talk about the most exciting games. It's no, this is a game that came out that has some degree of awareness. There's a designer, a publisher, something. This is a game that people know about. It doesn't have to be the hottest, it frequently isn't. but we're going to have content on that game for you. We're going to have opinions on that game for you. And another thing that they do that is so different from every other channel, I mean, again, most other channels, let's say most of the channels, is the diversity of opinions that they bring to their content. Nearly every single review, not every review, but nearly every single review on the Dice Tower has a diversity of opinions on there. There's multiple people covering that game. Most channels, myself included again, do not do that. Every once in a while, like Meg will show up on a review and it'll be like, oh, we're both covering it, and you get two different opinions. And I think it's so nice when that happens. I think that people bouncing off each other, being able to agree or disagree or provide their nuanced take, or to see that they both aligned on that or that they didn't align on that. I think that is such an incredible thing to be able to get out of a review of a board game. It's not just one person's opinion, it's a conversation, it's bouncing ideas. They either align and that tells you something, or they don't align and that tells you something. And the Dice Tower does that with so much of their content. Super popular games often have 3, 4 opinions. Less popular games often have 2 opinions, and occasionally here and there's a game that has 1 opinion. But that's something that they've worked their way towards over the year by treating this as an actual business. They employ, if I recall correctly from the crowdfunding campaign, they employ, I think it's 10 people. 10 people. How many channels do you know employ 2 people? There's definitely some that employ 2 people, but there's such a minor amount of channels have more than a single person who's involved in those production, in those videos, in that production. It's so rare to be able to actually sustain a channel at that size and at that volume, and it's hard to do so. It is hard. I think people don't always appreciate what goes into running a board game channel, a space that is not the most popular out there by any means. And the Dice Tower is the only content creators, in my opinion, that truly add, and the YouTube, I should say, in the YouTube space particularly, that have multiple people working as a journalistic entity, providing a diversity of opinions on nearly every single thing that comes out. Another thing that they do that is very different is, I want to say that they have the highest amount of live content from any other channel by a factor of 10x, if not more. Live content is hard to do reliably. Live content, the ability to engage with your audience on a regular basis, to be able to have them involved in what you're doing and not just doing the thing, but involving your audience in that, providing them an opportunity to interact with each other as well as with yourself. The Dice Tower provides the highest amount of live content from any other channel that I am aware of personally, by such a factor that is absolutely insane. And they've built an active community with so many people in so many ways through the way they run the Dice Tower. The fact that they have multiple conventions a year. They have Dice Tower West, Dice Tower East, they have Dice Tower Retreat, they have Dice Tower Cruise, they have Dice Tower Vacations, I think they just added. Is that it? Is that like only 5? Only 5 conventions a year? I think, is that what it is? You know how much work it is? I run this level up retreat once a year, this halfway convention. It's a nice convention, make no mistake, but it's like several hundred people, and that's like, oh my gosh, it's so much work to have as an extra thing to do. And the Dice Tower is there in the background, running 5 conventions, the smallest of which is probably about the size of the level up retreat, and the largest of which is like 10 times the size. It's maybe not 10 times, 8 times the size, 7 times the size. It is what they do is absolutely... Oh, did I do the cruise? Did I say the cruise? I may have said the cruise, I may not have. The cruise, the retreat, the conventions, the vacations, all of those things. It is an absolute ton of things that they do, and that's both an opportunity to interact with the community, to provide people a space to be a part of the Dice Tower community. Again, they do so much that other channels just don't do to that extent. I'm not saying no other channel does any of these things. Many channels do have, many content creators do have a little mini convention or some degree of live content or some degree of diversity of opinions, but the scope and scale to which the Dice Tower does it doesn't exist outside of the Dice Tower. And I think it's important, because without the Dice Tower, it means we have none of, we don't, if the Dice Tower doesn't exist, we don't have a single journalistic entity that we can turn to rely that there will be content around board games. This isn't video games where there's like 70 different sites that have this. There's gaming. I don't even know what are the video game sites nowadays. There's GameSpot. There's a lot of game sites. I used to play a lot of video games. I play video games now. I don't go to the game sites, but there's a bunch of video game sites you can go to that all have this kind of scope and scale. And the board game community, the board game hobby, doesn't support that yet. Again, I'm not saying there's nothing else out there that has that approach. Like, I know Gaming Trend has a bunch of people under it. There's a bunch of other sites that have some degree of something, but the video content that the Dice Tower does, the way that they present and the way they engage, just doesn't exist. And it's why I think that they're worth supporting. For sure, if you benefit from their content. even if you don't personally benefit from the content, it is, again, there's no other entity that does this. And the funding, like, funding is always an interesting conversation. I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole because I'm not the Dice Tower. I don't know the numbers. It's not a factor to me. But I can tell you from my side of things that I don't understand how Dice Tower does it. I don't. The money side of things, I don't understand how Dice Tower does it. On the board game side of things, the way we make money, Board Game Co., not Dice Tower, is we make money from YouTube ad revenue, which is not a ton of money. It's not. It's like, it's a decent side income, but it's a decent side income for me for one person, let alone the two that we have. The only way I'm able to have another person on staff, Meg, is because she does preview content, and that pays for her salary. The Dice Tower has 10 people on salary. Now, granted, conventions do bring in some money and all those things, but, like, the conventions, sponsorships, preview content and things like that, and then they say that the crowdfunding campaign is their biggest source of revenue every single year for actually maintaining the channel, which I completely believe, given what I know about the content creator space, and given the fact that, again, I have to have a full side gig of preview content lined up to pay the one employee I have, let alone having 10 employees. And I understand why they need it. I've been fortunate enough to visit the Dice Tower studios and to see the setup that they have. They have an actual studio space. They have multiple cameras. Someone else is always running the live stream. They have to have people constantly around. You have to play games. There's a ton of things that go into creating content. There's a ton of things that go into being able to play all the games you need to play, to put out all the videos you need to put out, to actually run those conventions. Conventions might seem like an easy way to make money. They are not. I can tell you that from my own side. They are absolutely not. They are a ton of work, and they are an opportunity to make money, but they are a ton of work to do so. I personally have benefited from the Dice Tower. First of all, through the hobby. When I first got into the hobby, 2011, 2012, the Dice Tower was the channel that always had content. The Dice Tower always had a video on what I wanted to see. Again, reliably, whether it was Tom putting out a review in front of his gaming shelves, that I think the first person to really do, maybe not the first, I don't know. He did doing the reviews in front of the game shelves, talking about whatever. I remember watching a Age of Steam versus Railways of the World right after somebody had absolutely crushed me at Railways of the World, or was it Age of Steam? I think it was Age of Steam. And then watching Tom's comparison of them and just being very much amused by how much he nailed the personality of players behind those games. Or whether it was Miami Dice. Whether it was Miami Dice watching Tom, Z, and Sam just going at it and talking about engaging, fighting, arguing, whatever it was about their games. Whether it was, I don't know, the top 10 list that they used to do, popularizing the format. Nowadays, if you want to run a channel, you should absolutely try to have a top 10 list here or there. It is content that does well. But like, if you look at the original Dice Tower top 10 list, like those things, those... I don't know who started that trend. I don't want to say that Dice Tower did if I don't know if they did, but again, if you look way back in the day, they had all of the popular top 10 lists when they first came out. The top 10 this, top 10 that, top 10 best cooperative games, family games, strategy games, whatever you want to call it, top 10 best games of the year. They had it all. They had all the content, and they always had a video out there for whatever I wanted to see, and so they became my go-to channel for a long time. I've always found channels here and there, and I've always appreciated finding new channels and new voices and new spins on things. I want to do another video coming up soon of like 5 channels I've recently been enjoying a lot. And I always do find those, and I think they're incredible. But you know what else happens consistently? When I find a new channel consistently, the content doesn't usually maintain its standard over time, usually. And then sometimes they just disappear. Because it's hard to do content creation. It's hard to successfully monetize your time in a way that justifies you keeping up with it when things are hard. It's hard to continuously put in the amount of work needed to put up that level of content. And most channels, not all channels, most channels I find the content either gets a little worse over time or they just disappear over time. And so it's one of the reasons that I appreciate that Tom has been, Tom's obviously the staple of the Dice Tower, but there's an entire crew that's been there for a long time. But Tom's been putting out content at this point for, I want to say 20 years, somewhere in that range. Before I joined the hobby, doing written blogs way back when, like I've watched the full history of the Dice Tower, which I think is worth watching, by the way. 4 hours of my time well spent, kind of catching up on where things brought him before I even entered the board game scene. It was entertaining to watch, to learn about his journey and the way the Dice Tower has been built. And one of the things I've seen over those past, 14 years now since I joined the hobby, 15 years since I joined the hobby, I've seen the Dice Tower continuously iterate. I've seen people come, I've seen people go. I've been sad when voices I loved left the Dice Tower, and I've been happy to discover and find new voices that joined the Dice Tower. I've seen the iteration of content and the way Tom has constantly tried to move the needle as far as putting out better content, better sets, more live content, engaging with the audience. This past year, they've been doing a lot of like these, more interactive like quiz shows, kind of, not really quiz shows, like audience participation, voting things. There's always new types of content that they are always experimenting with to try to bring not just what has worked successfully for them in the past, but to iterate and bring something new to the table on a constant basis to discover what works well for them, as well as what works for their audience. So on a personal level, I've appreciated their content as a hobbyist. As a content creator, I've always looked up to the Dice Tower more so than any other channel. Some of that's personal preference, don't get me wrong, because there's multiple channels out there that are larger than me, that have been doing it a lot longer than me, and so there's different types of people you can look up to in different ways, or look to see what has worked for them, but a lot of that's finding your voice, your personality, what resonates with you. But both as a hobbyist and as a content creator, I find the Dice Tower's style has very much resonated with me. And so because of that, I've been most inspired by what they have put out over time and the types of things they have done over time. So both as a hobbyist as well as I hesitate to use the word professional, but as a someone in the industry, I have appreciated what they do and how they do it. The biggest thing for me, and the reason why I wanted to do this video, is specifically because of that aspect I talked about at the beginning. There's a ton, an absolute ton of amazing content creators out there. I have shouted out many of them over the years, and I will continuously do so. Like I said already, I hope to do another one shortly of 5 content creators like I've really been enjoying their videos that I think are top-notch and stellar. But I don't think we've ever seen a channel like the Dice Tower, as far as the full way they are an entity that covers the industry. They're not a handful of people who happen to do content together. They're not just doing their own thing for who knows how long. They're not primarily doing sponsored content left, right, and center as their main source of thing. They're not doing, one video a week. This is not to dig this is not in any way to be a dig at other content creators. It's just to emphasize that concept that no one else does the scope and scale of what the Dice Tower does. You pick any other content creator, myself included, for sure. If they left the board game scene, I don't think they'd leave a hole in the same way that if the Dice Tower wasn't there, there would be a vacuum to fill. Most other content creators, someone else is doing something similar enough that I don't think it would be a tragedy if they were gone. I think it would be sad because their unique voice would be gone, but I think that there's many others who can fill that void. And I don't think that's true with the Dice Tower. And that's why, whether you personally benefit from their content, or less so, I think they are a channel worth supporting. This does not mean that you have to whip out your wallets and immediately go support the Dice Tower. It's really not intended to be that. It is intended to be a bit of food for thought. I think it's so easy to appreciate free content. It's so easy. It's so easy to simply just exist on the internet and be like, that's a channel that puts out free videos. Why would I ever pay for them? I think it's an easy thought, and I get it. I think sometimes it's worth thinking about what you would lose if that thing was gone. Or what the hobby would lose if that thing was gone. The free videos only continue to be free because people continue to support the Dice Tower. Nothing's truly free in that sense. Things take time, effort, and money. Yeah, I'm going off a tangent at the end here. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. If you like the Dice Tower, this is a video reminding you that they can benefit from your support. If you don't like the Dice Tower, this is a reminder that they are incredibly impactful and important to the hobby, even if you don't personally vibe with their videos. For everyone else, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.